Hi, I'm Marc Hornbeek. Some people call me the DevOps the Gray, and I've been asked by a few folks to give my predictions for DevOps and related things for 2020, since we just turned the year, and I thought that might be fun to do. So I put together this slide. These predictions that I'm talking about are really just based on my own experience, mostly with consulting and dealing with lots of clients and people doing DevOps and related things like continuous testing, site reliability engineering, DevSecOps, and so on. So it's not really based on any major study, although I'm aware of a number of major studies and probably influenced my thinking too. So in 2022, I do believe there's going to be a continuation of the adoption of the practices for continuous testing, DevOps, site reliability engineering, and DevSecOps. DevOps is all about continuous improvement, and especially related to the workflows for development, delivery, and production. So I don't see there's any major revelation that's going to encapsulate all of 2020, but there's a lot of things I see as happening, at least in my own world of the people I deal with. A lot has to do with, I'd say, optimizations. A lot of clients that I've seen have already implemented the first way of DevOps, continuous flow, or at least they've adopted continuous flow for quite a few of their applications, and now they're more into more advanced continuous improvements along the lines of instrumenting feedback in that flow. So the second way, improving continuous feedback, I think is going to be a continued focus and an enhanced focus in 2022, and that'll ultimately lead to the third way of DevOps, continuous improvement optimizations. Ultimately, as time goes on, maybe many organizations won't accomplish that this year, but ultimately that's where we're going, I believe. Along the same lines, you're seeing improvements in testing, sophistication, test environment optimizations. The SRE practices of setting SLOs and SLIs are certainly having an impact on improvements of continuous feedback, the nature of what we're measuring and what we're doing with those measurements. Toil reduction combined with automations in the DevOps world, I think, are leading us towards continuous improvements and more of an integration of automation practices between production and prior to production. So things like deployment automation is becoming a bigger and bigger thing, I believe, with some of the more sophisticated deployment practices. Anti-fragility in combination with DevSecOps, so anti-fragility, in particular the security aspects of anti-fragility, providing defensive security methods within production, combined with the more security prevention methods that DevSecOps provides, I think is leading us towards practices around what I'd call continuous security, and I've talked about that in other talks. Chaos engineering is emerging as more and more as a real thing for more and more organizations, so I think that'll be a continued focus in 2022 for some organizations, and an enhanced focus. And that also can be applied to security as well. If you look at people, process, and tech, DevOps has for a long time been about cultures and teams, team topologies, things like that. As the more and more people get on board with DevOps, there's a shortage of skills, so upskilling has become a bigger and bigger focus, trying to get more people, learning about DevOps and all the complexities of things. The DevOps engineer role has emerged, I think, more on a more solid footing, as well as specialties of DevOps engineering, as again these things get more sophisticated and require more of a disciplined engineering approach to implement a proper solution. I think that will ultimately lead to DevOps and SRE combined engineering specialties, as those practices ultimately merge closer together for further optimizations. In the process area, CI has always been the heart of DevOps processes. CD followed it quickly on its heels, and more recently continuous deployment, as people get more confident in their delivery practices. Then automating the final leg in the delivery and deployment becomes more feasible, and I see more organizations doing that. GitOps has raised its head as a way to integrate automation for infrastructure together with delivery processes. So this is becoming more prevalent in the worlds I deal with. Value stream management is becoming more real as well, where you're talking about end-to-end optimizations and automation, not only for an individual pipeline, but even a portfolio of pipelines. And finally, in the technology space, there's too many things to say there, but traditional DevOps has kind of crossed the chasm in terms of having DevOps platforms, containers platforms, COVID has driven us to look more and more about remote DevOps platforms, making sure that people can work remotely, whether a DevOps engineer, DevOps team, application developer. I think that's going to continue as a focus this year. DevOps as a service is emerging more and more as a real thing as people try to operate and provide DevOps capabilities for optimizations and efficiency purposes as a service. I think that's ultimately going to lead to more DevOps combined with SRE as a service eventually. AI and ML continues to have lots of promise. Most of the applications I've seen so far have been in the service management space, but more recently, a lot of focus around observability applications as well, and some emergence of applications in the test automation space, although I think that's still needs to turn a corner to be really practical, at least in a dominant way for accelerating testing, but that's an exciting possibility. So that's it. Those are my predictions for 2022. I hope you have a great 2022, and I hope that your DevOps journeys are successful, and hopefully this gives you some insights, at least from my own point of view, what might happen and where you might focus if you're interested about that. Thank you.